I just got back and I watched the pre-premiere of Hamnet in cinemas, and it's genuinely the most alive I've ever seen Shakespeare. And just the best way to experience it as someone who kind of got slightly traumatised by Shakespeare in high school, and the fact that I found a way back to it, I'm so thankful for. Also because one of my favourite books has this quote that most of the questions in life and almost all of the answers can be found in Shakespeare. And while I have not read all of Shakespeare, I do believe this. I do find this to be true. I think this film, Hamnet, speaks to something. Of course, it speaks to something bigger than Shakespeare and his family, but it speaks to a world that I think is a lot closer to the real world, the world that we live in right now, than we actually think. I potentially stupidly didn't put together that Shakespeare lived through the Black Plague and that that's what killed Hamnet. I didn't think about it like this. He was doing live shows. He was in the live art world during the Black Plague. And of course there were way less rules back then, and there was way less going on in general. But regardless, you don't have Shakespeare being like, oh, sorry, I'm not Shakespeare because the Black Plague happened. He found a way regardless. And nowadays when people are like, oh yeah, but Corona just like killed that. Yeah, it made it a lot more difficult, but I don't really see the difference. And I question in the future if people are going to give this excuse of, yeah, but it was during Corona, when we don't have all the excuses of, yeah, but it was during the Black Plague. This is something that got poked in my brain during this film. This film gave me the vibes of when I used to watch Little Women, the new version of the film, and there's always someone with a pen in their hand skipping through the forest in red, and that character speaks to me a lot. So I was very happy to have another film with that kind of character. And I don't really know it's hard that I don't know how I don't like this world. I don't like that I'm bothered by my housemate in the kitchen right now. I don't know what it is that makes me so uncomfortable around him. But I'm so uncomfortable. And I don't know what it is that made me an artist that doesn't seem to manage to transform their thoughts into words. And maybe it's a me problem, and maybe it's a world problem, maybe it's the mix of the two, but there's just too much information, input, and forget about output. There's not enough time to integrate or digest or any of it. And we all come up with excuses and be like, oh, but it's today's day and age and we're the first people to live through this. It's true. I did not grow up thinking that this is a world that I had the chance of. I didn't even know it existed. The world that I grew up almost knowing that I was going to have is outdated 10 years ago. And no, of course, I don't wish I lived in Shakespeare's time, but I do to some extent. He has such a gives the impression of having such a flow of input of real life situation, transformation of emotion happening on the inside, and output of just pureness of whatever that raw human life is. That output is immense because, well, the only things going in are the important things, and they were given value. And even to the point that I remember sitting watching the credits of this film with a tear in my eye and my brain full of poetry. It was just spitting it out, and that's nothing like me. I don't just sprout poetry. And I wanted to take out my notebook and write it, but there was people bustling everywhere. There's people already talking, and I was like, can we just take a breath for a second before the next thing And these moments feel so fleeting, and I know that I have them so much more than most people do, which makes me almost sad, because it's these moments that make us re-question and recalibrate and refocus. And I made some random notes of things that poked my brain that I thought I should capture before it all runs away from me and I keep running after other things. This is the closest I've ever been to Shakespeare's work in some way. Never seen a play, of course, didn't live back then. And for me, most of the reenactments are reenactments of what the actors did back then. It's not reenactment of the life that was brought to the stage. So to see what I found to be the intention of the true emotion put on stage in a cinema on a big screen in a very chill acted way. For me, I loved how raw the theatre pieces were within the film, because it really gave scope to what I probably was back then. I have no idea, but in some nowadays plays and depictions of Shakespeare, can't even talk, depictions of Shakespeare. In some recent depictions of Shakespeare, I find it just unrealistic that ever existed back then. And even when it comes to scenes of actors rehearsing incredibly complex lines just to get the intonation right and the tonality and the intention and the words and the memorization, it just pushed me so much to want to memorize so much more. And maybe not how I've done with some poems in the past where I committed to memory forevermore, ideally, just to get information in, information out, like learn to have that, because it's such a wealth of knowledge to hold and to have power over your own speech, which I'm only realizing quite recently in life that I don't feel I have. I find that in my brain I'm so much more coherent than in speaking, than in speech. This is the thing. Even the tiniest little bits of grammar are lost on me now because, well, here's an excuse. It is a valid excuse, but there's no point crying about it. I'm going to have to find a way to speak more eloquently, even within my current situation, which is I haven't lived in my home country or a native English-speaking country in 10 years. I've only spoken with internationals, and the last 3 years, I've pretty much only been speaking French. So besides films and books, which has kept my love for the English language alive, I don't have any English input. I don't hear it. Which in some way I'm trying to see as a good thing, because then I get to control all of the English that goes into my brain, basically. However, I just have to speak simple, slow, almost wrong English, because that's what everyone around me speaks. And I don't want to. I want to have that transmission of thoughts to speech so clearly and eloquently. I watch Priyanka Chopra speak, and she's so clear and so direct, and you can see that there's no umming and ahhing, there's no thought about translation from thought to speech. And it's because she worked on it. I just don't know how to work on it. I really, really want to. I really want to pore over pieces of paper how Shakespeare did. I really want to care how his family did. I want to know about the herbs and the forests and what language they speak. And it poked in me how to put this. This film really poked in me the lack of value nowadays, or the taken for granted we give towards Beethoven, Shakespeare, Paganini, Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci. They're just such, yeah, we know the name. It's like, yeah, of course I know who Shakespeare is. I had to read some of his plays in school or something. Shakespeare didn't exist, no one else would have been Shakespeare. However, who was it who discovered gravity? Isaac Newton? If he didn't discover gravity, someone else would have discovered gravity further down the road. Someone didn't make the vaccine. Someone else would have made it further down the road. And of course, we would have had different playwrights. Gravity would have been discovered as gravity. At the end of the day, all scientists love maths. They might have different workings, but the equation is going to be the same. The inevitability that we will work towards discovering gravity, pretty much the same. However, no one was working towards a Shakespeare besides Shakespeare. No one was working towards the symphony. That exact symphony. That exact combination of notes and melody and feeling put into it, other than these composers. So then how do we prioritise science over art so much of the time? And even when incredible masterpieces of work like this film come to be, and I feel like I'm very much in the arts world, and I have looked at reading Hamnet, and I was like, yeah, but I feel like I need to do some back reading. I don't know enough to be able to even go into that, which is not true at all. And then the other non-excuse is that, well, there's like a million books. They're all works of art that I want to read and live with and put inside my brain and hope that it nourishes me to have something better come out. And actually, I just need to tone down the rest of the world. And films and pieces of literature that make me do that, I pay more attention to. So Hamnet will be read this year by me, for sure. My thoughts on this film will be pulled out of me and given the time and effort and anger and me feeling like I'm hitting my head against the wall because I'm having to learn skills along the way of having to express myself, which I feel like is quite late in life, whereas I feel most people actually live most of their lives without being able to express themselves eloquently or transform their thoughts into words, and even just speaking about a topic that moved you. This is one of my favourite things in the film. When she says, "Tell me a story." And he says, "What kind of story?" And she says, "Tell me something that moves you." I think it's the most perfect answer ever. And I thought I'd just make this video to tell you what moved me after watching this film. Might not be quite as moving as how they did, but I thought I'd capture my thoughts on it anyway. I think that's it for now. I keep listening to science saying that sleep deprivation, number one cause of depression, being lonely, number one cause of anxiety and depression. Of course, all these things are true. Of course, if you eat better and sleep well and feel healthy and energetic and have loving, supportive people in your life, you're going to feel better. But especially after reading Daily Rituals and looking at artists' lives, it's not that. And I want the science to be done on the artists for once, which no one wants to be that guinea pig. I also don't want to be that guinea pig. But don't tell me it's a better use of my time to go to bed and sleep for 8 hours than to flesh out my thoughts on Shakespeare that I feel could help change my perspective towards how I consume certain kinds of media, in terms of how I create and how I go about managing my input and output of the world, because I want to come to the end of my life and have 90% of memories of my life and not of people's lives around me that were so forced upon my brain because that's just how the world is now, or happenings around me. I want to remember where I was when that happening happened, not just the fact that it happened. I want to remember that things moved me. I want to remember what things moved me. I want to know what that changed in my personality and my chemical being and what I made from it. I want there to be products or just evidence of my life. I want that I don't have to explain if I lost a child. I could say, watch this show and you'll know everything that my heart sang. I think to create art like that is something worth striving for. Not even for anyone else other than yourself, to make that connection between strong feeling inside, strong feeling outside. Because we all get trapped with too much strong feeling on the inside. And we think we're going to explode. We don't need exploding artists, do we? And I'm going to go and try commit some Shakespeare to memory. Because I think I would like to have that in my little toolbox of my brain while I go about my life. Because there's some notable poems that have been jammed into this head of mine, some notable pieces of literature. And it makes me a bit sad actually that it's taken till this point in life to re-meet Shakespeare. And I know that Hamlet, it was not made to highlight him, but it's only through the people's lives that are more accessible to me did I rediscover his universe. And I am very, very, very grateful for that, and grateful that that exists for the world. Until I can sprout Shakespeare out the top of my head. I thought I should practice trying to recite things, in general anyway. Starting with my favourite first poem I ever learned, from one of the best films I think ever to exist. How happy is the blameless vessel's lot, the world forgetting by the world forgot, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, each prayer accepted, and each wish resigned. I always loved the end of that. I think to leave a poem on the word resigned is oddly satisfying, metaphorical. And then there's The Raven, of course. Edgar Allan Poe. The amount of people who must have done what I've done and got the first verse and a half, and then twiddle up their words and stumble over them all and don't manage to get any further. But I am currently on the point of learning what I think is one of my favourite lines of the poem that I don't know by heart yet. So we're not going to get to that bit. We're going to try do the first verse in a bit. Maybe I butcher up the second half a little bit and reword a tiny bit by accident. I'm going to give that a go. And then I'm going to go have a shower and go to bed, because while I said it's good to make art and to vent in a good way, I feel like we need a new word. Shakespeare made lots of words. I'd love to make a word for whatever this is. Like this, it's not flow. It's like if I was annoyed at something right now and talked about it this much, it would be called venting. But just the getting out of something good, not just venting about something bad. Menting, making meaning, menting. Is this menting? Mentoing? Don't know. I've entirely lost the plot while talking about fucking mentoing. This poem. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, I do remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor, though I had sought to borrow from my book's disease of sorrow of the lost Lenore, nameless here forevermore. How can you not love that poem? And how can being able to sprout that from your own brain not make you want to just enrich it with so much wonderfulness and not be able to point out random memes when you see them? The amount of bullshit that I've accidentally learned and put in my brain feels painful knowing that that is possible for me to, like, if I'm locked in a room, the amount of rubbish that my brain could come up with and only 2 pieces of poetry, for me that's very, very sad. I'm going to work on reverse engineering that. So I guess to finish with, what else have I got memorised? The Litany of Fear from June. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it has passed, I shall turn the inner eye to see where it has gone. Where it has been, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And maybe twiddle some words in that also. The where it has gone, or where it has been. And the rapping, tapping of the raven always gets me thumbled. Do I have anything else memorised for you tonight? I have a very dead leg. I don't think so. I memorised one of my own poems once, but I've already forgotten it. This one is for you. This one is for the one that made it through. This one is for the one... I don't remember my own poem. That's great. Do I have something else? I don't. I want to work on one of the sayings, or little like collection of phrases they kept saying within the film between the wife and the brother. It was really beautiful, about the forest. I'd love to be a girl in Reading Forest. I'm gonna go to bed. I hope your brain gets to sink into as much poetry as there is in the world. Because you don't even have to like poetry, you'll be able to write it that well. To be able to enjoy it. Because honestly, never say I was a poetry girl. I just got too much feeling in me to know any different. I just got too much feeling in me to know the difference between poem and emotion. A very bad poem though, that's just called shit, let's be honest. Oh my god, my leg's dead.